And so practicing concentration, sometimes if there's resentment in the mind, becomes unwholesome concentration. And we can tell when our concentration is sort of going wrong because there's an experience of tension or worry or strain. Sometimes meditators even get a headache from forcing themselves to focus on the object of meditation, even though there might be irritation or some other kind of aversion in the mind. And so as we practice, we can use skillful effort to overcome some of the obstacles and create a wholesome state of mind, which is why I keep saying from time to time of trying to let go of the unskillful and go toward the skillful. And so oftentimes I think the first step in establishing skillful concentration is making sure that our practice is wholesome, and we do that as best we can by blocking the hindrances. And so we might see them arise, but we don't go toward them. There's specific, sometimes in Bante's book, he talks about establishing skillful concentration, and that we take periods of our meditation to purposefully give up all thoughts of attachment to situations or ideas or people and habits. And we don't think of our family, we don't think of our friends and relatives, we don't think about our bills, and we just tell ourselves to choose this time period to develop concentration. We didn't sit down at the cushion to think about all these regular thoughts. And so, we make a concerted effort to make good use of the time. And, the suggestion is also to not worry about anything that you might have left undone, or about things you might have done poorly or incorrectly, or how we might have offended someone. That we remind ourselves that the past is gone and what's done can't be undone. And just a few minutes of cultivating thoughts of loving friendliness, loving kindness, to help the mind feel pleasant and better able to concentrate. Just even taking 3 deep breaths like we do sometimes at the beginning of the practice, and focusing the mind on that chosen object, like the breath. And so we keep the mind in the present moment by making this unremitting effort to pull ourselves together, to pull the mind together. And when the hindrances are present, we use the methods that we've learned to notice that the hindrances are arising, and cultivating the wholesome state of mind that's the opposite of the hindrance that might be present. So if, for example, there's sleepiness, we get up and walk or open our eyes. If there's agitation, we can open up the spaciousness. If the mind is wandering, we can take it more on a single object. And so in this way, we cultivate these thoughts of letting go and letting the mind become bright and light. And so once the hindrances have been overcome, which can happen in a sitting, we refocus the mind on the object that we chose, like the breath or the sitz points. And basically that's if we are having the goal of a session to practice the concentration technique, that we don't look into all the details of the experience that's coming up, but we mindfully keep focusing, going back to that primary object. And each time we establish wholesome concentration, it gets easier and easier, and we can feel encouraged. And so no matter how short-lived or, how the attempt seems to be sort of feeble sometimes for that wholesome concentration, we still gain something by cutting through the old habits and improving the mind. I mean, for me, the person who's always falling asleep, it gets kind of old, and it's hard to bring up enough effort to say, okay, I'm just going to deal with this old habit again. But, consider the options. The options are just, I'm roaming around in a stupor of delusion, and not waking up to the present moment and not really improving the mind. And so, training the mind in concentration, we can feel happy about whatever level of wholesome concentration we've been able to achieve. And in sitting meditation, wholesome concentration brings energy and stability and confidence in the practice. And then joy can arise, because wholesome concentration keeps the hindrances at bay. So even in everyday life, this degree of wholesome concentration, we need it to just keep living with good morality. And it helps us focus on our positive thoughts and our speech and our actions. It helps us abstain from unwholesome ones, and it allows us to deal with daily problems a little more impartially, with equanimity, with a more equanimous state of mind. And we can see that the reverse is also true. Sometimes there's success in developing wholesome concentration depends on this strong foundation of morality, of the precepts. And our sense of this improves, and so does our concentration as time goes on. So there's also, once again, there's ordinary wholesome concentration, and there's also wholesome concentration that can sort of spearhead all of those mental states that we were talking about previously, mindfulness of mental objects. There's a little story in Bante Gunaratana's book about when the Buddha was still Prince Siddhartha. His father prevented him from seeing anything that would encourage him in a spiritual direction. And when he finally did see those four signs, the old person, the invalid, the corpse, and the renunciate spiritual practitioner, that was a turning point for him. And so pondering these four things really helped him reach this state of concentration, and insight arose into the fact of suffering. And he resolved not to return to confront, the pleasures of his father's palace, but to seek the solution to human suffering because of seeing those heavenly messengers. And that's one of the reasons why we repeat those four recollections of old age and sickness and death, and that we can't hang on to anything that keeps, that we're going to lose what we have. And it's our attention to karma, our intentions, of whatever our actions are, that create what's to come. And so this way out of suffering is clear, and that there's ordinary wholesome concentration that helps us see the truth of the Buddha's nature, of what the Buddha taught. And then there are other stages of deeper, fuller concentration, which we can go into at another time, because I want us to have time to talk about this for now, because of these different levels of concentration. So let's hear what you might have to say.